You're listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Dean Johnson.
From the AFTERBUZZ Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and Bing.com, and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AFTERBUZZ TV's Mad Men After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. If you'd like to buzz in on tonight's show, you can buzz us at 424-256-1729. That's 424-256-1729. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AFTERBUZZ TV's Mad Men After Show.
Mad Men, Mad Men, Mad Men, Mad Men, Mad Men, Mad Men.
Oh. Bing is for doing, and we are once again doing the Mad Men After Show. I'm Joe Braswell. I'm here with the full complement of hosts.
Did you miss me? Did you miss me?
We so did, Catherine.
Thank you. Nice to be missed.
That's the voice of lovely Katherine Tulich.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I've been away.
But London.
London for Star Trek, and then last week New Orleans for Now You See Me film.
Oh, sweet.
Magic.
Yeah.
Very nice.
You see me.
Yeah.
And as always, with my good friend Joe Sanfelippo.
Hey, everybody.
And as always, with my good friend Matt Lieberman.
What's up, everybody? So
Yes.
excited.
And then today we have Marissa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
Ooh, hi.
Hi, Marissa.
Hi.
But we will be joined by Phil
Spill.
Svitek later.
Svitek.
Phil will be in later to actually do the Mike August catches of the week, and he will have an announcement, a very special announcement.
Big
Can't wait.
announcement.
Big, gigantic announcement. But first, we're going to get into this episode, aptly titled The Crash, Episode 8, which is a great title for a fantastic episode.
I want some applause for this episode. Can we just
It's as good. I mean, these last 3 episodes we've talked about, last 2 they were fantastic. This was great. But before we get started, I just have one quick question for you. Are we Negroes?
I know. Are you my
I know I am.
Are you my grandfather?
But yeah, no. So that is just one of the many little gems in a great episode. So, let's try our best to unpack this gem of an episode.
Because it's
here.
very dense.
Very, very dense.
I like the way I didn't know what was going on. Who was real? Who wasn't real?
Right. Well,
amazing.
it moved rather quickly
Yeah.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Matthew Weiner scripted, and it was kind of like a fever dream. Once everybody took those special vitamin shots.
yeah.
That vitamin B, wasn't
Right.
it? Vitamin
Jim Cutler's
B?
doctor.
Yeah.
We may need Jim Cutler's doctor to fix us up too.
Seriously.
I don't know if I want to
through
get
this
fixed up like that.
Well, there's so much to get through in this episode. We may need to get fixed up.
Oh, good
He'll
God.
fix you right up.
I'm just wondering if the caffeine was flowing on the set that day, just because just the way they had to get
That
into
great
it all.
moment where Jim Cutler and Stan
Yeah.
were racing around the office.
Yeah, I love how Cutler, the boss, is
Yeah.
immediately racing
Right.
Stan.
Yeah.
That's already a tone setter. You're already like, uh-oh.
I know. I just want to talk to the actors and go, how much fun was it doing this
Yeah.
episode?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this was just,
Cutler, who we're still getting to know, he's way nuttier than Sterling. When we met him, we thought, okay, this is the Sterling counterpart, but he's a very different kind of guy.
He keeps his nutty right below the surface. Like he's
Right.
like really calm on the outside. Like that scene where you say, "Hey Peggy, come here, take a look." Oh look, they're banging. Like that.
Look at them. They're doing it. Look at them. Check them out.
yeah,
It's right below the surface.
What do you think of that, Peggy?
Stan's
Oh, crazy.
banging my dead friend's daughter.
Yeah,
Who-
isn't
something?
that cool?
Right?
May or
She
may
looks
not
about
be
15.
underage.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, well, I do agree, but I think that to a certain degree, they are mirror images. But I think that just Sterling is a little bit. Sterling's from the 50s and early 60s, whereas I think Cutler has more of a '60s kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the same age, but I think clearly Cutler is more adapted to the '60s.
Cutler's
You
chosen
know
the
who would
time.
really relate to Cutler is Robert Morse because he was crazy on drugs in real life. So I have a feeling he'd be like really interested in this character.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's get a little bit. Just the obvious thing up at the top is that we have this big account here, and we have Chevy, which is kicking their ass to no end.
Literally kicking Ken Cosgrove's ass.
Oh
like,
my God.
Like that opening scene, I thought it was a dream.
Yeah,
Like
wow.
these guys are maniacs.
Well, here's the thing. Like
Detroit guys.
every single thread this week was rich with tension, and that crash at the top I think set it up.
Oh, yeah.
Because we didn't know what happened to Ken. We learned quickly thereafter that he was fine. He had a leg injury, which apparently was undone by these whatever they took.
He rocked the time step like
Oh
it
my
was his
God.
job.
What a
Right.
brilliant
So
dancing
he's-
performance.
He's a great dancer.
Who taught you to do that? My mother. No. A girlfriend.
Girlfriend.
And he's out.
Well, I love that Don after watching that thing, his only response is, "Who taught you to do that?" It wasn't like.
But they must have had to know that he could tap.
Well, I'm sure Matthew Weiner has known it for years and wrote it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah,
Was
absolutely.
looking for a spot to put it in there.
So we have Chevy kicking their ass, and the title's literal, obviously, because it's literal, and it starts with a crash and it ends with a crash, right? So it starts with a crash of the literal crash with Cosgrove, and then it ends with another literal crash with Don coming down and crashing to the floor, which is very, very, very cool, and it's a little literal, but it's still very, very cool.
I was gonna say I've never hoped someone would go down so badly.
Yeah.
I was just like, please pass out before you ruin everything.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, creatives are known, and not only in the '60s, but still to this day, creatives are sort of known for how shall we say this? Using stimulants to enhance their creativity.
What are you talking about, Joe?
This is what I hear.
Joe, I'm afraid.
But whether it's the ad guys or
Writers.
or writers,
What's in the pipe?
whether it's whether it's God forbid some sort of caffeine or other.
Yes, caffeine. Caffeine is the drug of choice.
Yes.
So this is
So all
is
you
nothing
kids out in
new.
America, it's only caffeine here in California. That's all we ever do.
That's right. And so it's nothing new here, but it is interesting. So it's interesting to the effect that has on each person as far as their senses are heightened.
But I don't think I was going to say what was new back then was that they actually did think it was helping
Sure.
them. They
Yeah.
didn't realize what speed was back then.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
no.
they literally did let doctors give you diet pills speed,
Sure.
thinking that it was actually helping you.
Yeah.
So that is the difference. I mean, we know now
Right,
what
of
it does
course.
to you, but they didn't then.
It's a special mix of some B vitamins. And
Yeah, doctors
Well,
were gods.
A
They let them- yeah.
proprietary
Proprietary
Yeah.
mix.
vitamin mix.
I want to tell you the history of this later on when we get into this. 'Cause
Well,
I
just want to say it was interesting to see everyone's reaction to being heightened, but what you didn't want to see or didn't need to see was Draper, like a heightened Don Draper was
No good.
like,
Wow.
I mean, it was unlike, it was super Don, like he's hitting on women in high speed, he's giving inspirational speeches in high
I
speed, he's making horrible decisions in high speed, like it's like Don like times 10.
That's amphetamines, right?
Yeah.
Make bad decisions faster.
It's like 6 seasons of Don compressed into one afternoon, one weekend of amphetamines.
But also his control was gone, right? That was the big thing. He
Yeah.
really was actually really in touch with his emotions, which was a scary thing
Yeah.
at this point. That's what I thought. That's what the drugs did to him as well. There was no
Exactly.
guard. There was no guard.
Well,
left.
it's coming into
Yeah.
it like when you take something like that, it's all about how you come into it. What's your frame of mind? So everything, even though he didn't realize it, was colored by that last conversation he had with Sylvia, which he was just kind of pathetic a little bit. Still, it goes back to that the second episode of the season when she said, we shouldn't fall
Right.
in love."
Right.
What she said about trust was great. Like, you have to be able to trust the person you're having an affair with. They got to have as much to lose as you do. And now I'm wondering why the hell I ever trusted you.
and when it's over, you've just got to still
Right.
be able
Yeah,
to trust this
keep-
person.
keep
That's
our
what,
secret here,
Yeah,
yeah.
keep
Yeah,
the
little
secret.
does she know that
Yeah.
Don's not stable.
No, Don is BF crazy on
Yeah,
some
and
level.
he's very crazy. And go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, I've never seen him this vulnerable around a woman.
He's yeah.
Wow.
He's crashing. I mean, I think I mentioned this a
Really?
couple of episodes back, but
Yeah.
it's really evident now. Like Don, this is a full blown midlife crisis, like full blown crash for Don. I mean, the crash.
Yeah.
This is. this was a breakdown. We witnessed.
He's gone down this road before. He went down this road before he and Betty split up. And he went, down a similar way. When he gets self-destructive, he gets self-destructive. Right. I mean, it's on a whole nother level.
This feels, I don't know, Matt. This feels different for me.
It's a bit more intense and it's more close to home. I think he's more trapped than he's ever been before.
Right.
Because he can't just leave this wife too, and Megan isn't like pushing him to reveal anything. Betty was suspicious. Betty was in his face. There was constant conflict. Megan, he's kind of lost her to the world because she's owned by everyone that sees her on TV. The company, he's starting to lose his grip there, and Chevy has them in a stranglehold. Like when he saw that calendar of dates leading up through 1970, up through, the proposed end of the show, that kind of like I know must have struck a chord.
Right. I think what you said about Megan being owned by everybody is, I think it's huge. I think to his psychology, and Sylvia gave him power. Like with Sylvia, he had his own secret. He had his own thing happening that was separate from Megan, who's obviously she's bigger than she was at the beginning of their relationship, and she's got more going on, and she's got these scenes. She's made out with a guy on television. That's humiliating on some level to him.
Sure.
And so he's got Sylvia in his back pocket, and that's gone. And he milked it last week for all it was worth. And he was going to totally dominate this relationship, and he was going to be on his terms for his pleasure, blah, blah, blah. Now she's totally out. That power's gone.
Yeah. And it's interesting, especially juxtaposed against the flashbacks that we got this week, revealing more of his history. And I think two key scenes that forever altered his ability to relate to women,
which we'll definitely get into
later on.
Yeah, I want to, and I will tease and what I want to talk about as well, which is I've had it with Don Draper, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm off the Don Draper. I'm off Don's the man. I'm off the Don's the man.
Last couple weeks been pretty rough.
I'm just, it's well. I'll get to that later. But I do want to thank, first of all, everyone for listening and downloading us on iTunes. We really, really, as always, appreciate you listening to us, downloading us, rating us, good and bad. We love the feedback. We love the 3s, 4s, and we love the 5s.
We love the 5s.
We do. So please continue to do that. We listen to everything you say, even the people who say that I can't talk.
Really?
What?
Oh, someone said I get stuck on words, but I do, and that's fine. But I appreciate that too. So please, we're
I don't appreciate that.
Huh?
I said I don't appreciate that, but I'm
right.
glad that you do.
Yeah.
Right.
You're a bigger man than me.
I am physically.
Yeah.
And mentally.
Sadly, it's true.
So let's jump in. But thank you for listening to iTunes and watching us on YouTube. Hello, if you're on YouTube, hello, and you can stream us live on all your devices still, on your iPads and your iPhones and your
whatever's.
what do you call it? The things I don't
mobile
Androids.
devices.
Androids.
Yes,
the things I
indeed.
don't have
All
there.
of your mobile
So there I
devices.
go again, not able to spit it out. So let's jump right into this. So Joe Sanfelippo, what are we going to talk about? What jumped out at you?
I want to talk about the methamphetamines here, and the amphetamines, because they weren't methamphetamines at the time. These were amphetamines.
Right.
Proprietary blends. Well, this is what's interesting to me. I asked my father this many, many years ago, because my father's 84 tomorrow. Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Sal
birthday,
Sanfelippo.
Dad.
And
Shout out to Sal.
And so you hear these stories about these guys, in the 60s, start drinking at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, drink through till 4 or 5 in the morning, never stop the party. And they didn't drink like, let's have a couple beers. I mean, they started with hard whiskey, they hard booze, and they went all night. And at one point I found, what the hell, man? We can't do this. I can't party like that. How did you guys do that?
How do you function?
And he just doesn't even bat an eyelash. He goes, amphetamines were legal. I said, no shit. He said, yeah, I guess my dad's doctor was the last guy in California prescribing amphetamines. Yeah. Here's the way this worked. In 1887, this is an interesting history because I think it's interesting to find out just how many people in our pop culture and our actual history were hooked on amphetamines and how many decisions we still live with today were based on drug hazes.
Right.
So first synthesized 1887 by a German doctor. They found that it opens up your bronchial tubes, opens up your nasal passages, very good for all this good stuff, and improves your blood flow and increases your heart rate, yada, yada, yada. All clearly, in case we didn't figure that out from the show. 1965, everything became illegal. They were over the counter until 65. They were illegal unless you had a doctor's prescription. Thus, the proprietary blend shot in everyone's ass. So, in 1970, Controlled Substances Act severely restricts the legal production of injectable methamphetamines. Not really. In 1971, there were 31 amphetamine preparations being distributed by 15 pharmaceutical companies. Legal production was over 12 billion pills a year. So
Jesus.
that is the extent of the amphetamines that were being given to our parents and grandparents.
Right.
And that's after the limitations.
yeah.
That's after the limitations. So just give you an idea of how many people were on it. And so this stuff that happened in the office was by no means the only. This was common.
Sure.
Exactly,
And
the
here's a
Kennedys,
list of some interesting people that had amphetamine addiction. John F. Kennedy
And Jackie.
and Jackie,
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler, Ted Haggard, Charlie Parker, Lenny Bruce, Judy Garland, Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley. Lots, I mean, and the list goes on for
Your
days
dad.
and
Right.
days, and apparently my father.
Sanfelippo.
And let's not forget, women were given this regularly as a diet pill.
Yeah.
You know, even young girls were of Sally's age
Yeah.
would have gone to a doctor if she was a little bit overweight in those years, and they would have given a 14-year-old girl speed to help them lose weight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So just to give you an idea of how this is
Yeah.
very, very widespread, very, very common, and so no one thought they were doing anything wrong. These were prescribed by doctors.
Well, and so Jim Cutler, Jim Cutler's got his guys.
Nutty Jim Cutler, man.
He's not- Cutler was just trying to, and this is a difference between sort of what goes on at CGC versus Sterling Group and Draper Price, like what their creatives are doing. Like you have a big project on the line, call my guy.
Yeah.
Call the doctor.
He'll fix you right
And,
up.
Yeah.
you really need to go upstairs and see my guy. You really need to just go ahead and take care of that.
So what do you? So what else? You got?
Cutler's just one sec. Just Cutler's all over the place. The way he Shaw calls Don into his office at the end of the episode, and Cutler just slides right in. And he's like, "Hey guys," and it's just suddenly his meeting. He's just a crazy, nutty, everywhere guy. He lurks.
And he runs watching him run up. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of what Harry Hamlin's doing with that. I think he's got a terrific handle on the character. He's creating something really fun to
Good
watch.
to see him in a good role again.
Yeah,
actually.
right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's great.
I thought that was I thought the history of amphetamines was interesting and germane to what's going on in this episode. So there was no sense among the businessmen at the time that they were throwing a pot party or that we were going to all sit down and do peyote together.
Yeah.
That was not the thought. It was that we're going to get production up. Here's how we do it. We get they're only vitamins. This is good stuff. Everything's going to be fine. No one was thinking they're throwing a crazy, no one's going to be tripping their ass off. That was not the perception.
Well, talk to me about how it affected these guys in this episode. The historical perspective is fantastic, but talk to me about what happened to our guys on.
Well, everybody,
today.
we just talked about it. Everybody went into Super Them. Whoever they are, they went into Super Them. We said we got Super Don. That was pretty awesome. Super Don.
Was it
immediately.
awesome? I'm not
It
sure.
wasn't
No,
awesome.
So my question is just
enjoyable. How
quickly,
about that?
Peggy didn't take it though, did she?
No.
Interesting. Yeah,
Peggy,
just the guys.
nor
just the
did
guys.
Ginsburg.
did not
Ginsburg,
take it.
yeah.
But Peggy drank, according to Ginsburg.
Yeah.
So he was the only one who was sober in the entire office.
Not a maniac,
Yes.
and that's the quality.
Yeah. But he still stabbed Stan with a pen.
That was pretty.
Right.
You sure he was on something?
No, he's just
just
Ginsburg's
crazy.
just nutty
Ginsburg,
himself.
yeah.
He's just neurotic.
Right.
But he wouldn't have come up with this Apple
Imagine
shenanigans.
Ginsburg on speed.
Ginsburg on speed would literally explode.
Right? Neuroses at light speed.
He would have flown out the window and kept flying.
I do like the idea that they kind of hinted at a dynamic there, which is, Chaw was out of town. Chaw was gone. So it's almost like the lunatics were left.
We're running the asylum.
Yeah.
So I mean, so we see Cutler.
When
Chaw
Chaw's-
leaves, Cutler's like, "Oh, is he gone? Let's call my guy."
When Chaw's away, Cutler comes out to play.
Let me ask you guys a question. Does it seem to anybody else like Don is kind of taking a step back until the end for the last couple of episodes from his job as
For a while
as
now.
as boss?
Well, he's been doing that since
he
last
said a creative,
season.
but I
Yeah.
really felt last few episodes very much a step back, and then he came back and he took it back at the end of this episode. But
He's conflicted, I think. We've
I
seen
feel like
him.
he's deferring to Ted a little bit on some level, like he's letting Ted be the adult.
Yeah.
I think that he's been distracted. I mean, I think that Don still wants to be Don. We saw that in the initial conference room scene. There was a power struggle. Everyone had their junk on the table. It was a power struggle, but I think that the reality is Don's distracted with Sylvia. He's off. He's actually maybe subconsciously on some level thankful that Ted Chaw's there to guide the ship because he's off in Sylvia land.
Well, I mean, he's been off since the beginning of season 5. He comes to the table when it's convenient for him, and right now it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient, especially when he's hamstrung by this Chevy schedule that just bores him to tears. because everything that they bring him, or that he brings them, they don't like. He can't get in to find out why.
Yeah.
So it's an unsolvable problem, and he doesn't care.
And you see the division between in the room. You see the division between the guys like Cutler, who are like, well, there's and Sterling, who are like, yeah, well, we're billing them.
Yeah.
The money's coming in. The
Yeah,
creatives who are
they're
like,
paying.
Yeah, but we're working our ass off. We're just expending all of our creative capital, all of our creative energy for nothing. Like this is
So
like,
it's like sort of selling your soul for a car. Too,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I mean,
whole kind of
because-
idea that car. Yeah, what do you do just because it's a car? You know?
Yeah.
And he says that, doesn't he? Towards
At the end,
about
yeah,
you
that-
know,
that great
place
line.
turns into a whorehouse. Well, look what they had to do last time with Christina Hendricks' character.
Well,
Yeah, with Joan.
this is that's the statement of the episode, which Matt and I were just like
Trying to
we were
unpack,
Yeah.
because with all the whorehouse flashbacks that we
Right.
have, with that, I mean, we recap the episode right after we see it. We see it once,
Yeah.
okay. I feel like I could watch that episode 10 times
Sure.
and still be trying to piece together like all of the possible meanings behind that word.
Right.
I mean, we're going to talk more about the flashbacks in a bit, and I think we can come back to that topic
Sure.
then. But it's very dense.
The last thing I want to say on the whole on the doctor and the drugs and the whole experience was, everyone's experience was different, but the end result though was Chaw sort of saying, I'm glad that they sort of did a after school special kind of ending, like,
Right.
this didn't work out, the work sucks, and
They spelled Chevy
Chevy
wrong.
We can't do drugs, slam.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, so I'm very glad that it went like, this is the most brilliant work we've all come up with. So that was
Although, in fairness, I think we can all extrapolate that we grew up on many commercials that were probably put together in a
Written on
speed
speed.
induced haze.
I would like to. The only thing I would like to touch on that does fit in that whole office-y drug-induced thing is good old poor what's his name's daughter floating around, the hippie.
Frank's daughter, Wendy.
Frank
Yeah.
Gleason's daughter.
Frank-
Wendy Gleason.
I thought she was a figment of everyone's imagination at first, because I was like, going, who
Wendy
is
Gleason.
this girl?
Wendy Gleason. Problematic that Wendy
Yeah.
Gleason.
Frank
because-
Gleason dies, and his daughter goes and starts plowing
know.
creatives in the office.
Well,
Yeah.
first of all, the daughter's the hippie. It's free love time. Don't judge the daughter.
And Gleason says
I'm
this
just
is a
saying
lot
it's
better.
sad.
Okay, well,
I'd be
listen.
bumming.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
she's grieving. Lord
Yeah.
knows what she's been going through. But she's a hippie. She comes to the office.
She looks
Hi,
fine.
Ching.
But she's got a bunch of like,
The I
cracked
Ching,
out,
yeah.
bunch of cracked out creatives,
Yeah.
and she's, I don't know.
She's holding them all, just like agog at the I Ching that she's throwing.
Yeah.
She like, and Cutler said towards the end of the episode, it'd be better that she's here than she's off running around in Greenwich Village.
Like she
meant
wanted,
to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
At least we can watch her here, literally, Cutler.
Right. So she
You
only.
creepy, you creeper.
Hey, she only banged one man in a post-father dying haze.
You know what?
In fairness, though, she did have her eyes on Don. We don't know what happened
Yeah.
in some of the time that he
That's
dropped.
true. We didn't actually see it because his whole weekend was compressed. So it's entirely possible that they did make love in the span of that conversation, and we
he
didn't
doesn't
see
know.
it.
Well, because in that hallway, he went down that hallway, had an epiphany, lost a day, turned around, and went, "Hey, what about the soup campaign?" It was Saturday. All of a sudden, it was Sunday. Or Saturday, whatever. You start on Friday.
Super
Yeah.
Don. So let's talk about Matt. Well, what do you want to talk about, Matt?
I want to talk about the super intense robbery sequence.
That was
robbery.
so scary.
with Sally and Bobby and Jean. Sally, who's been stepping up for absent Daddy Don, and mom and stepdad
is-
are off running for office.
It is traumatic the day you find out you're a Negro. It is a difficult day for any white kid in New York, I would imagine.
Flippo, you don't even know the half of it.
No.
No. But like every plot I felt like had scenes of extreme tension. This one I was just like horrified the whole time.
It was
I'm
long.
like,
The three of you were like, "What's happening?
when will
what is happening?"
Like because
Well, like, for a minute, I wondered if she was someone from Don's past, or I mean,
Right.
there was that kind of thing.
Her hair
hang
was
on.
too tall. Hair didn't seem
Yeah.
right. She
Right.
looked-
No,
she
but I mean,
looked
from
crazy.
his childhood, in the
But-
whorehouse.
But we were looking at the childhood in the whorehouse.
And
It was
she
all white
not.
women
That's
there.
what I'm saying. It kind of didn't make
Yeah.
sense, but just for a moment you thought, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, it could have been a dream because we've
Yeah.
seen so many things in this episode that are left ambiguous. But at the same time, when she starts moving towards Sally, there's just a menace there. The menace of the
Yeah.
unknown. Do you know what I mean? These
Scary.
kids have no defense.
Yeah.
And, this could have turned ugly at any point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know who this woman is from Adam. Do you know what I
And I
mean?
mean,
Well-
Don, over an incident like this, a father can totally lose any
I think
visiting
I
rights.
think he just did.
Well, I don't
That's
know
the
if
vibe I
they
got
did.
there at the
Well,
end.
you know,
Did they
I think
then?
so.
Yeah.
I mean, Betty was there.
Betty was angry, but I'm
Well,
just wondering, whether.
I mean, Betty basically cursed the
Wow.
entire island of Manhattan in the process.
She
Yeah.
did, yes.
Yeah.
And the cops were like,
You're
it
on
could
some
have happened to
cast-
anybody.
But that's
No.
what I'm saying. Could have.
You're on
the
some
cops
casting
were
couch.
like,
Did you know that Henry is running for office?
Yeah.
Speaking of, real quick, Betty
That's
dropped
the
the
takeaway.
weight.
She did.
She dropped the weight.
We got Hot Betty back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Intense, cold power hair
really
Betty.
nice though. She was hot
Yeah,
anyway.
she was
Come
hot
on.
anyway.
Don't
Joe.
say things like that.
Joe.
Oh, I'm
no.
sorry.
really
I have
bad.
an opinion. I'm clearly the only one who thinks Betty's hot or
Can I-
skinnier.
can I talk-
apologize, universe.
Can I talk about a robbery? In
I wish you
progress?
would.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
All right.
We had that moment when Sally picks up the phone, she starts calling the police, and Grandma Ida takes it, and she says, "Oh no, they were playing a prank," and she puts down the phone, and her face changes, and I'm like, "Oh God, is Don about to lose all of his kids? Are we gonna cut away and come back, and his kids are just dead?"
Yeah.
Yeah. I never got the sense of it was. First of all, it's just so extremely well acted, well directed scene. I think the actress who played the grandma was fantastic, and I think that scene was just enough menace and just enough balance of like, is she what the
it wasn't out of the question.
Yeah.
Because she knew enough, but at the same time, when you're a kid, your parents train you just enough how to handle strangers. When someone calls, I remember that. My mom came to me and she changed her mind about something. It had always been, my mom isn't home right now. Can I take a message? To, oh, she's busy right now. Can I take a message?
Right.
There was a difference.
I also love the way it was sort of shot and viewed from sort of Sally's perspective.
Yes.
So we as the audience are looking at her and looking at this woman like, well, so it's putting us in the Sally position, like, well, okay, but I mean, we all knew. I knew instantly that this was bad, but it was a question of how bad was it going to get.
And was it real or not?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, this woman, obviously she didn't know anything about Don Draper, but it's interesting that, she came in, obviously must have seen her name somewhere because she said your father's Don Draper. But even the fact that she was bold enough to say, I'm your grandmother, but in fact she could get away with saying that because Sally, as Sally says, she doesn't know anything about her father. But she didn't know that, this woman.
No.
But it was interesting that she could play on that vulnerability when she really had no idea of the history.
Well, there's a con. Obviously, she's done this to many people in the building. There's a con woman element there. She has that sort of elderly, African American woman where she comes in like, I know, child, I know. Don't you remember me from way back? It could be anybody. It
Let
could
me
be like,
make you some eggs.
yeah,
child.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, make me some eggs. How do I know you again? Like that's, I think there was like she's done it to adults and children, so it wasn't necessarily. She was just sort of a good grift, if you will.
And she was very, very smooth. Very smooth.
very smooth grift.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
I mean,
this
if you
TV's
knew
in
your
here really good.
grandparents, she would have.
The TV.
But she's taking a punt that Sally didn't know who. I mean, I've met all my grandparents. I think I
Right.
know what they looked like. I
Yeah.
mean, she was taking a punt that she's saying, "I'm your grandmother."
Well, I think it wasn't literal. I think she's doing she's doing some of the black African American child like it's me. I'm Granny. It's Granny Braswell.
all right.
Yeah.
You know me. I'm Granny. They call it.
sort of
Not
a
it wasn't a
familiar-
literal thing.
Okay, all right.
Because
Took it
obviously,
literally.
and that was kind of the joke for Bobby. And
Yeah.
then that was like, are we Negroes? Like I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
It's always like no. She's just. I mean,
She's just Grandma Ida.
Yeah.
But that to me was the level of menace there of like she's going out on a limb with this thing that's not really plausible. And then as soon as Sally played it kind of close to the vest of I'm not going to say you're wrong, get out of my house, because that could have led to violence. She was like, okay, and she kind of felt it out, but didn't tell
was
her
pretty smart.
where the watches were. And then Bobby just comes out and says, oh, he has 4 watches. This is where they are.
Yeah.
Zoom off to the watches.
It's like I'll know him when I see him. It's like what are you looking for?
Don can afford the new watches, man. Get her the watches, get out the door.
Yeah. Well, and shout out to Sally Draper. She really
Yeah.
handled herself quite
She
well.
handled it
Yeah.
very well.
She's very
Very
smart. And very is very much a Betty Draper. The Betty Draper skepticism was coming out of Sally. At that
I
moment.
loved. There was a
That's a
huge
good point.
change.
Very
That's
much.
totally true.
Change in Sally when she's dealing with Bobby and Jean towards the beginning of the episode, you know, this babysitting, there was a lot of Betty in how she handled those kids.
Well, she's been forced to become a little adult, hasn't she?
She has.
Really has.
And there's the takeaway from that I got from that whole scene in terms of Sally Draper is Sally's going to be just fine. I feel like Sally's going to be able to take care of herself in any situation. She's got just enough Don, just enough Betty to be able to handle herself. And this is how she's doing it at, what, 13, 12? What is she?
14.
She's
14.
14.
Yeah.
Oh, 14,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be babysitting at that point.
Yeah, well, of course. But she handled herself well in that situation, calling the police and the whole 9 yards. So.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to touch on the robbery?
And Don came out at the end. He said it was his fault, and he left that door open because he's been obsessing over Sylvia.
Well,
He's been backdooring it.
Yeah, but that which I want to talk about that because that's not Don Draper. Don Draper's not one to sort of say this was my fault.
He's not one for sentimentality.
Sentimentality, mea culpas. He's not, you know.
Yeah. But that's all for that topic, I think.
All right. Well, and what about you, Catherine? Catherine, what are you talking about?
Well, I guess the flashbacks were so fascinating to me. The fact that, I mean, you know, Don's been involved with so many different women, but there's sometimes people out there that have this incredible emotional click. And obviously she is this woman that has really clicked on his past and his, you know, that's what we saw tonight, that this relationship with Sylvia is far more than any other woman he's been with, in the sense that she really pushes buttons to his whole past, and that's what we saw, this whole flashback scene of, like, I presume his first sexual encounter. Is that what you gathered?
Well, she said it.
Yeah.
She took his cherry, was her quote.
Yeah. And I mean,
molested him.
Basically, yeah.
Well,
and
not
I mean,
basically, definitely.
molested, and then, you know, he
Take it
has
easy,
this
John.
violence afterwards, like, you know, you did the wrong thing. I mean, how does that warp your whole relationship with women and sexuality? I mean, it's
Well,
just,
the only woman that showed him any kind of tenderness was the prostitute. So
Yeah.
you've got that combination of, like, the only maternal thing he had, at least in these flashbacks.
Yeah.
The maternal came from the prostitute, and then that same maternal figure turned around and popped his cherry for him. And then he had to go back to that oatmeal campaign.
Yeah.
You know what he needs.
Yeah.
And she knew what he needed.
Yeah.
And I mean that whole thing. I mean, you got layers of how does this man view women at this point? I mean, you've got this combination of mother and whore together.
Yeah. Sorry. For me, it comes down to three things that we saw in this episode. So we have his actual mother, the establishment, family, the person that he's actually tied to, failing in that regard, isolating him when she thought he had the consumption.
Yeah.
You know, one woman,
Was that his mom?
that was his mom.
Okay.
His mom moved in and kind of became the mother hen of this whorehouse.
Yeah.
And Amy makes a point to say, your mother doesn't know anything about health. So this one woman takes him in, keeps him in her room secretly, and nurses him back to health, and is his one ally, one positive source of feedback in this entire living environment. And then she turns around and kind of betrays his trust by he says he does not want to have sex with her. She does it anyway. So now you've got this complex thing where he doesn't entirely trust the women that he sleeps with, but it's the only source of comfort that he can find. And family is just a source of dread for him because it was never fulfilling in the first place.
Let me ask a question here. I don't remember if that's his mother or not. That's what I'm having a tough time remembering. But
She said it was his mother.
This is his mother.
yeah? Okay. So would she tease off on him though when the prostitute's getting kicked out, and he should say, "Popped his cherry, you owe me $5. Figure we're even." And she beats the hell out of him with that spoon, right?
Yeah.
You're disgusting. You're horrible,
That's right.
disgraceful. So then you layer on sex equals shame on some level.
Yeah, that's what
And so you've got this combination mother whore. You've got this reaction to that being disgusting, horrible, disgraceful. So you're equating moms and prostitutes together, and the sex with
His mom was a prostitute.
It's bananas. This man is so screwed up.
Catherine touched on it off air. I mean, it's very Freudian. It's a very Freudian, very literal Freudian situation here happening. I was a little skeptical with the flashbacks of this season because I felt like we had enough of Dick Whitman flashbacks. I feel like I got to know, you know, I know what Dick Whitman. I feel like I had enough Dick Whitman over the last 6 seasons, but so I was a little, not more the whorehouse and this, but I got to do a 180 on it. There's a lot to learn in this episode, more insight, further insight into why Don is Don.
Very potent.
However, which is when I get into what I want to talk about.
Sure.
That does not excuse Don. Like this, all of this getting this sort of like, well, now we know why Don's so effed up. This is why he does things he does. Doesn't mean he's this great guy who we all want him to be and think he is. I want to go out on a limb and say, I touched on it a couple episodes ago. Don's an asshole. Don is not. We're all, including me included, like whatever Don does, like Don, get him Don, whatever it is. But Don is not a good guy, and it reminds me of something that David Chase, because Matthew Weiner is a disciple of Chase, and this is something that again, one of my colleagues, Andy Greenwald, this is a direct lift from something he talked about, which is so true. But so Chase was really sort of frustrated by the end of The Sopranos by like how much of an asshole he made Tony Soprano, and how bad he made Tony Soprano, and how the worse that he made Tony, the more people rooted for him. By the end he was like, what do I have this guy do? And so I think there's a bit of that with Weiner as well. I think Weiner's doing that with Don, and I think that it's obvious, it's known that Weiner's very obsessed with the notion of how much can a guy that looks like an astronaut, how much can this guy get away with? How much can this guy get away with? Pete is doing a lot of the same stuff. We talked about this before. Pete's doing a lot of the same stuff, but because he's Pete, it's like, this guy's a punk,
Pete looks like a crap weasel. We all hate Pete. But Don does the same stuff.
Looks
and we're
like an astronaut.
Don.
That's Don being Don, son.
But not anymore.
Well, no, but not anymore. But I'm wondering, because people are still, people are still loving and rooting for Don. I think that this episode sort of was the complete breakdown. I love the fact that it all seemed to come to a head here, and we'll see how this all plays out. But it all seemed to come to a head with this injection of this amphetamine, because, like I said, you had Super Don, all this stuff. You had all the things you love about Don. When he was doing them on drugs and in this heightened mode, they were really, really pathetic. Even him hitting on the girl and the secretary, do I know you from somewhere? And to his motivational speech, which was just like, felt a little hollow.
So empty.
Yeah, and then like all of his creative work is buzzing around. Like
he's come up with the answer, like that big speech where it's obvious, oh God, he's about to tell Sylvia.
And I'm not saying that Don isn't still Don, but the notion of like this guy, this mysterious guy, when you slow it all down, when you take a slow drag of a cigarette, and he's cool Don, like he's the coolest guy in the world, but he was very exposed in the middle of this breakdown as a guy.
But I was just going to say, that kind of made, for me, him in some ways, I know you can't stand Don, but woman's point of view, that the fact especially that he was so vulnerable in this state, and that he was prepared to really sort of almost go begging to Sylvia to have her to,
Yeah.
That to me was like, my heart went out to him for that. And I know you're saying he's a jerk, but I actually saw that there's real emotion there, and that, which by the end of the show he gets control back. But the fact that he was really so obsessed and in love with this Sylvia that he was prepared to bear everything, ruin his career, everything for her
marriage.
Yeah, everything.
But that had nothing to do with Sylvia.
Nothing.
This is the thing. Like,
this was about him, not her.
I know the women are like, he's so. He's just in love.
It's like, look what he put her through last episode.
That's it. This is about him. It's not about her.
Nothing to do with Sylvia.
Nothing at all. And let's examine Sylvia for a moment. Has she done anything particularly phenomenally exciting? Has she engaged in the most amazing conversations? Has she said the most amazing things? No. Has she dropped incredible insight bombs into his No. Yeah. She's been a girlfriend on the side.
But I'm just saying it's a huge emotional trigger for him.
Sure.
This
No,
woman.
100%. But it's not about her. Let me add one more thing.
I'm not saying it's about her, but I'm just saying that this woman has hit on a button that other women haven't.
Sure.
For the Don character.
But I think that's time in his life.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
If you want my 2 cents about it, he said something in there that I thought was really interesting when he's when he's tripping his ass off, when he's speeding like a maniac. He says something to was it Cosgrove when he's talking about, I have to be there, you have to get me in the room.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the timbre of my voice.
Exactly.
I have to be able to move. I have to be able to say this to them. I have to be able to convince them. Because he can make himself.
Nobody spoke to you, did you?
A little bit. Just a little bit. No, but I mean that's for real though. I mean, like he recognizes that he can create himself to be what they need.
Right.
Yeah. I can make me be what they need.
But to me, in that moment, the tripping balls exposed Don. I mean, the tripping balls Don was exposed. I mean, he was like, I didn't. you see the creation of this Don Draper that Dick Whitman has created. You see it sort of crumbling right before our eyes until literally it collapsed in front of us on the floor. And I can only hope that out of the ashes of that mess will come some fusion of the Dick Whitman and Don Draper. Maybe he will get his shit together, because he did make the phone call to Sally, and he did have the moment of like contrition of like, you know what, I left the door open, it's my fault. He didn't drop an I love you, but close to, he got, so that was something. He did get in the elevator with Sylvia and did not lose his shit.
Nothing. He
and he
just
did
taking control.
Exactly. And he did go to Chaw
and
tell Chaw he's the guy.
There are layers to that line, though. To I left the door open, it was my fault. And I think that also could refer to his relationship with Sylvia, namely, I left the door open to my vulnerable self.
Yes.
It won't happen again.
That's why he just went bang. I'm not doing it.
I do want to take a moment to make sure that we're clear. Abigail's his stepmom. Abigail is Dick Whitman's stepmother. His mother died giving birth to him. I just want to make sure we're clear about that, right, so that we don't have any problems later on.
We are clear. You're right.
Abigail was his stepmom, and so and at that point, these flashbacks, his dad was already dead. So Abigail was essentially taking care of him and his half brother. So,
and to that point, one last thing about everyone just rooting for Don so much is that, and you've been that smirky face, Don was molested. Like he was molested by this older woman. I know, Joe, you're like, molested? She was hot. I know. But if that were a young Don were Donna and that dude were Rooster, we'd all be like, what the F, But because it's Don, we're like, oh, Don did it again. No, that's
molested.
Not, exactly.
Oh, Don did it for the first time.
Not to mention, we've got such bad parenting in this show, and I mean that's also what we saw in that flashback. I mean, he's got no role models for parenting. This man.
I hope Don rises from the ashes. I'm sick of guys like you, Flippo, rooting for Don. Don.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just did that. So we have no Benson watch.
No. But Benson watch is just he's out there lurking in the shadows. Let's move
waiting
on.
For
dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
He wisely avoided.
Would you like a croissant?
Yes. But we do have Phil's here to give us our special announcement as well as some Mike August catches.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Phil Svitek.
Let's go ahead and start with the Mad Men catch of the week from Mike August. The episode last week called Man with a Plan revealed a skill that Bob Benson is good at lying and manipulating his way to getting what he wants.
Boom.
As in falsely telling the nurse that Joan swallowed furniture polish to get her into the doctor's office faster.
That's a good point, Mike August.
Our host Matt has been warning us since the season premiere that Bob was a weasel to watch out for, and Joan made a terrible error in saving Bob from the firing squad.
Oh, wow.
It's going to come back to bite everyone.
It certainly is. Mike August agrees.
Okay.
Frank Gleason, while talking to Ted in the hospital, said, "Give Don the early rounds." To take the boxing reference further, Don is the heavyweight champ, but Ted has the better cut man in his corner to heal the wounds inflicted upon by Don. That cut man, or cut woman in this case, being Peggy. Also, as fighters do, they attacked each other's weaknesses in this episode. Ted's weakness being his inability to handle alcohol, and Don's being his fear of flying on small planes. Peggy scolded Don for getting Ted drunk, and she very well may find a way to use Don's weakness of womanizing against him to benefit Ted. And Peggy mentioning Napoleon III during the margarine meeting was interesting because Napoleon was also a womanizer like Don, and it distracted him during the reign in France.
Mike August, that's a good one. I love that one too.
Super fan.
I know.
Super fan Mike August.
The author of The Art of War was also quoted by Gleason when he mused, "If I wait patiently by the river, the body of my enemy will float by. Perhaps this means that Don will destroy himself and as is already happening with Pete." Also, the author of that book said, all warfare is based on deception, and isn't that pretty much what advertising really is?
The Art of War.
A lot to chew on.
Two more.
Whoa.
Interesting that the companies are working on this brand of margarine because later in real life the FTC filed against false advertisement for this, primarily that it claimed that it prevented heart disease as opposed to butter. The ad featured a child blowing out candles on his birthday cake with the caption, Is there a heart attack in his future? Several other margarine brands were not reprimanded for making the same health claim. So, and today that brand doesn't do much advertising, not even social media. And lastly, Bert Peterson said to Don, "Looks like the worm has turned." That may have been used as subtext to mean Peggy, in that the meek will fight if stepped on. And also, yeah, it's PS, the new studio looks great.
Cityscape, baby. Cityscape.
So, Mike August, I really like these catches.
Those were great.
I like them in particular because of what they mean for the show and what they mean for Don, you know, and where it's taking us. And speaking of the big announcement where we're taking Mad Men, for the finale, June 23rd, we are going to the John Lovitz Comedy Club at Universal City Walk for a live viewing finale and cast Q&A to follow.
Yes.
Whoa!
Wow.
Hey!
Wow, exciting. Wow.
All right.
Right now, we have about 6 people from the show booked. I won't say who because we all know how that goes. But I will say we have, as of now, the big man. And you can interpret that how you will.
And by that, you mean Bob Benson.
Yeah.
Bob Benson.
Exactly.
Yes.
He's going to be there. He's going to weasel his way in.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll
Even
find
if
a way
he's
to
not
get in.
invited,
Right.
he'll find a way on stage.
Do you have a ticket, sir? Sir, do you have
Anyway, check that out. There's if you go to johnlovitzcomedyclub.com, you can purchase tickets. If you're not in the LA area, fly out. It is worth it.
Yes.
So,
Plenty of accommodation nearby.
So all of us, at least 6, maybe more of the cast all together, watching the finale together, and then we'll do a Q&A with everyone. So it'll be very exciting.
Sounds phenomenal.
Yeah.
That
there's
is
nothing better out there.
amazing.
I
Yes.
mean, it's going to be tons of fun. It really is.
If you're a Mad Men fan, this is your deal.
This is
Yes.
Mad Mentopia.
I mean, not only do you get to see us in person,
Mentopia.
Aren't they lucky?
yeah, not only do you get to meet the 4 of us
Mad
Well, that's
Men-a-palooza.
enough.
Which is exciting enough. Katherine Tulich in the flesh.
in the flesh,
Yeah,
but
it's
you
so
get to meet. And
exciting.
there'll be some Mad Men people there too as well. But so great. That's it.
Matthew Weiner going to be
That's
there? We don't know yet.
We don't
We're
know
teasing
yet.
on
It's
my
all a
bad. I'm sorry.
surprise.
I'm sorry.
It's a
I'm sorry.
surprise.
Joe,
I apologize.
what side of the microphone are you on?
I feel terrible. I just
Yeah.
got excited.
Did you wake up
All
on the
I
wrong
say-
side of the microphone today, Filippo?
Again, all I'll say is the big man himself is coming. Interpret that as you may.
Yes.
Okay.
I got excited.
I know how I'm interpreting it.
Then I'm gonna be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will.
Exactly.
Thanks, Phil. So, yeah, that's and we're close to the end here. But I did want to mention there's a small catch that I did catch here. That's a pre-Mike August catches in that conversation with Peggy and Stan. When Peggy's telling Stan, you can't. She's something to the effect of, you can't go through life like this. You can't use alcohol and sex to adults. Sometimes it's good to just feel stuff. Like that's the speech she didn't want to give to Don. Like,
Yeah.
that's like she's saying those words to Don, and she's the person probably at this point the only person who can give him that speech. But
Well, she said drugs and sex, but it is very much the same sentiment.
yes, exactly. And so that's all I have. And the last thing I added that I thought was funny is we didn't mention is Sterling, the doctor who's so concerned about
Right.
the heart. So he's like,
I got a heart condition.
Yeah, that's all right. Come on
That's
in.
great. Yeah.
We got you. The doctor is
Right?
in.
I love that everybody's cool with it too. I got a heart condition.
Let's jump to
All right, you're
predictions
fine.
here.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Joe Salvatore Sanfelippo.
I predict that Don is going to have a brief respite from his ridiculousness, but it will be brief. I do think that as Megan goes up, Don is going to have the perception that he's supposed to come down. I think that the more established Megan gets, the worse off Don is going to be. I think he's going to have a brief bounce back from this. He's going to clean himself up for a heartbeat, but I don't think it's going to be lasting. I think that his marriage to Megan, because of who he is going to be ultimately destructive for him through no fault of her own. It's not her fault. It's going to be who he is. Because she's going to do some interesting things, and I think that's going to be an instant threat to him. So that's what I predict. I predict a little bounce from this into some goodness, and then followed by a deeper spiral.
All right.
Wow.
Catherine?
Well, I'm kind of interested in where Peggy's going at the moment. Do you think that a
Yeah.
relationship might develop with we had a little hint tonight of because they've been getting on so well.
Her and Ted.
Yeah.
No.
it's
what she-
I would stand.
Dan, yeah. I mean, she rejected his advances. We didn't talk about that, but she rejected his advances. But they do get on so well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
There's a few options out there for
Yeah.
Peggy.
Yeah. I think season 6, the big headline is the fall of Don. He will never be higher than where he was years ago. And I think if you look at the arc of the series so far, if season 7 winds up being the final season, you know, he's come he all the way up to season 4. He's coming closer and closer and closer to being an authentic person. And then he ran away, married Megan, and we're just going to see that decision continue to strangle whatever chance he had of being happy out of him.
I'm interested in this whole. I'm mentioning Don too. Like, I want to root for Don. Don't get me wrong. I want to root for Don, but for the right reasons. I love Don. I want to root for him. I still want him to be an asshole the whole time. But I do think he'll rise. You know, rise from the ashes like a phoenix. But I wonder if he can have. I'm not sure the two. I wonder if the creative Don means his personal life will be shit. I wonder if he gets his personal life together, will the creative Don suffer? So I don't know that there'll ever be complete happiness with Don as we know him. So. I'm looking for him to rise from the ashes, but I do wonder what this means for Don as we know him.
Sure.
That's all I got. Joe Flippo, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me on the Twitters at Joe Flippo, and you can find me here at AfterBuzz. I do Bates Motel with Mr. Braswell, and we also do Hannibal. And you can find me on various voiceovers floating all over the universe. And that's about it.
Katherine, where can we find you?
We can find me, Twitter and Instagram at Katherine Tulich, KATHERINE TULICH, and various media outlets out there like the LA Times, etc.
Like the LA Times, little thing like the LA Times.
LA Times.
Little
Matt
publication.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Matt Lieberman. That's MATTLIEBERMAN. I am also on AfterBuzz TV on Defiance and Doctor Who, which is wrapping up its run this week. And you can find sketch comedy at VLYTV.com.
And I'm Joe Braswell. You can find me on Twitter at Joe K. Braswell. Find me season finale of Bates Motel coming up. You can also find me doing Hannibal with both with Joe Sanfelippo, and on Grantland.com, where I can steal more of Andy Greenwald's takes, and Extra with Maria Menounos. That's all I got. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for rating us on iTunes. We'll see you next week.
From Bing.com, executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.